Go the holier than thous.
That's right.
Steps up and delivers a 50-50 ball. What a catch by Olave.
Rescue reports that he is on his way to the Milwaukee Bucks.
He's not getting his happy ending this time.
Okay, Saturday, January 6th. Welcome to the Continental Sports Podcast. Today, Valerie Preactor going to come on, talk about the Ravens. She is a sports reporter, sports anchor for WBAL in Baltimore. Ravens, of course, did clinch the AFC. Going to talk to her about that, the season they've had so far, and the expectations going into the playoffs. Ravens, of course, have had some bad playoff luck in the past in recent history. So going to talk to her about expectations going into the playoffs with the Ravens and get into some Orioles talk as well. Of course, Orioles had a historic season this past season to get swept in the playoffs in the first round, their first round to the World Series champions, Rangers. Get to that awesome interview with her. A lot to get into. But first, guys, I do want to start off with some playoff scenarios for some of the bubble teams in the NFL. A lot of teams, both NFC and AFC, are on this bubble right now, like it usually is on this time of the year, going into the last game of the season. A lot of teams need more help than others, but we'll kind of break down every team, very, very rapid style, and just kind of give you an indication of what needs to happen for your team to make the playoffs. Start with the Vikings. I don't think anyone really wants to see the Vikings in the playoffs. Outside of Minnesota fans. Vikings, of course, they need to win. That's an obvious statement, but they need a lot of help. Green Bay needs to lose. Seattle needs to lose. And Tampa Bay needs to lose as well. It could be Tampa Bay or New Orleans.
So you're saying there's a chance? There's
a chance. It's not going to happen.
No.
But you don't even want to see the Vikings in the playoffs. I don't want to see the Vikings in the playoffs. Of course, they have an absolutely terrible QB situation right now. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. But how about the Packers, though? I think all that has to happen for the Packers is the Packers have to win, and I think they're into the playoffs. And this was something that not a lot of people thought was going to happen. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this real fast. I mean, going into the season, that expectation was not that the Packers would win, and now they're only one win away from making the playoffs and exceeding expectations this year. Overall.
Yeah, it certainly won the expectation even at midseason, because remember, I think they were 3-5, 3-6, and just absolutely sputtering. And they've been playing some good football lately. I mean, they've beaten the Chiefs, they've beaten the Bears, they've beaten a lot of good teams. They went to Detroit and dominated the Lions on Thanksgiving. So the Jordan Love has risen up to the moment. He seems to have been better in big games this year. He's going to finish maybe leading the league in touchdown passes. That's how good he's been this season, and it's been a pleasant surprise. And Green Bay always seems to have good quarterback play. And I think the most impressive thing about it is he's doing it without really a number one receiver, because they didn't have a receiver with a 100-yard receiving game until last week, and it was Bo Melton, of all people, that pulled that off. Yep. The running game's been good, but Aaron Jones has been hurt for half the season. The offensive line's been a little up and down. So the fact is Jordan Love is getting this done without a whole lot of great talent around him, and I think it's very impressive. Matt LaFleur, I think, deserves his flowers as one of the best coaches in the NFL, because it's so easy to cover it up and say, oh, that was Aaron Rodgers. Well, now he's doing it with Jordan Love. So I think we got to acknowledge Matt LaFleur, pretty damn good coach.
Yeah, they have the inside track for the number 1 seed, or 7 seed, right now.
Maybe even 6 seed if the Rams lose this game to the 49ers.
Yeah, because they beat the Rams earlier in the season. That's
true.
Right.
Well, if they would be the 7th seed, I think they would be. They could be a 6th seed as well. I know the Falcons are also on the bubble. Another team like the Vikings, we don't really want to see in the playoffs, potentially. I mean, I don't think we want to see any of the NFC South teams in the playoffs, but
maybe Tampa.
Maybe Tampa. Tampa Bay, speaking of Tampa Bay, they actually, them losing could help a lot of teams out. I mean, obviously the Saints, they could help. The Falcons, it would help, obviously, as well. And I mentioned how the Packers and Vikings could use a Tampa Bay loss too. But for the Buccaneers, we'll just go to them real fast. It's really simple for them to make the playoffs. They'll win the South just winning out. They'll win the South.
Right.
Of course, they could still lose, and New Orleans and the Falcons, I think, could tie, which of course isn't going to happen. Saints, of course, are kind of on the same trajectory. I mean, they if they win and Tampa Bay loses, they'll win the South. And like I said, NFC South is just completely wide open right now. I agree with you, Zach. I think Tampa Bay would be the most favorable team to make the playoffs. I think they would be the most fun team to watch in the NFC South out of all the teams that are left in contention in that division. Last one in the NFC to touch base on, the Seahawks. They've been kind of floating around all season long, it seems like, with playoff contention. Ever since like midseason, they've been going in and out of playoff contention, and of course. They are beating the Eagles was a huge win for the Seahawks. They will be in the playoffs with a win against Green Bay, or they can have a Green Bay loss and a Tampa Bay loss as well. So Seahawks, let's talk about the Seahawks, just the season that they've had so far and the tumultuous path that they've had to get to this position. I mean, not many people thought, including myself, midway through the season that the Seahawks were going to be a playoff contending team, but yet here they are, scrappy the whole way, and they find themselves in Week 18 with a win and get in scenario.
Yeah, they have to win, and they need Green Bay to lose. So it's not that it's unlikely, but it's going to take outside help, and they got some outside help last year to get into the playoffs. They snuck in on the final day of the season. I think Geno hasn't been quite as good this year as he was a year ago. I think the Seahawks defense has kind of caught up with them. We saw last week them give up 30 points against the Steelers. I still think if they were to happen, they happened to make the playoffs. I mean, they would play either probably Philadelphia or Dallas, and they gave both those teams a game. They beat the Eagles and almost beat the Cowboys earlier in the year. So it would be an interesting thing if they actually made the playoffs. But I think it's a lot for them to ask. But I do think the Bears actually have a chance to go to Green Bay and win that game.
Oh, for sure. We'll go to the AFC now. Bills, craziest playoff team on both sides. I mean, AFC or NFC, they can have a potential to be a second seed or not make the playoffs at all. Of course, right. I think leading into that final Sunday night game, depending on what happens, I don't actually know the exact scenario, but depending on what happens,
what they need to do if they don't beat the Dolphins is they need either Jacksonville or Pittsburgh to lose. So they just need one of three things to go their way, and they'll get in. So the chances of them getting in are still pretty high. But yeah, they could either be the second seed and one of the most dangerous teams in the playoffs, or not a part of it at all.
Which is, I don't even think I can't even tell you what time that happened, that discrepancy. I don't think that ever has happened before. I'm sure it has. I'm sure someone can tell us when it's happened before. But, of course, in my lifetime, I don't ever remember seeing that be a scenario, that lopsided of a outcome depending on the final game. Texans can clinch the South with a win or Jacksonville loss. Colts can clinch the South with a win and Indianapolis.
And the Jaguars lost.
Yeah, with the Jaguars loss
Both
as well.
The Texans and the Colts are in the exact same position.
Yeah, they just need to win and then have the Jaguars lose.
Right.
Jaguars though can still be in it. Of course, they can still win they can clinch a playoff berth.
Yeah, if they win the division. They could get a wild card if other things go their way. Specifically, I think it would be the Steelers that would lose. But
yep, Steelers last one to get into with the playoff scenarios. Steelers can clinch a playoff spot, of course, with a win, but they also need a Buffalo loss as well.
Or Jacksonville.
Yep. So Steelers could have a very good chance of making the playoffs. I mean, we just talked to Valerie Preactor, of course, coming up in a little bit here. But last year, the Ravens, they played Bengals back-to-back games, and that turned out to be not very good for the Ravens. And she kind of mentioned how Ravens can struggle against AFC North teams in the playoffs, and so Steelers and Ravens could definitely be a scenario where they see each other, 2 games in a row, one in last game of the regular season, and then
that wouldn't happen because the Ravens they have a bye weeks, and the Steelers would have to play somebody else.
Well, I meant like for the Ravens first game.
Yes, it's possible.
It could be the Steelers.
Okay.
Yeah, so
that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's get into Week 18 though. I mean, a lot of the playoff scenarios are always kind of crazy last game of the year. A lot of things up in the air. But let's get into the actual games. We'll give our usual rundown like we always do. Closest game, most intriguing storyline, shootout, snoozer, and then we'll give our favorites heading into Week 18 as well. But, Zach, we'll start with you. What is your closest game heading into Week 18?
I don't know if it's the best game of the weekend, but I think the closest game is going to be Texans-Colts. I think these teams are pretty much similar in every facet. C.J. Stroud's a better quarterback than Gardner Minshew, but the Colts running game has been better than the Texans running game. Both defenses have been pretty solid for the most part, especially the Colts pass rush. And remember, these teams played earlier in the year. The Colts handled business. That was when Gardner Minshew had to come in for Anthony Richardson earlier in the year, and he went 19 for 23 through 2 touchdowns to help the Colts win that game. They've historically matched up pretty well with the Texans. The game's in Indianapolis. It's a standalone Saturday night game. I think this game has 27-24, kind of a field goal game written all over it.
Yeah, this is going to be my closest game too. They always play each other really close. Like you said, Zach, they're both two different teams since week 2 as well. Houston's defense ranks 3rd in success rate since the week 7 bye. The Texans have also found a run game thanks to Devin Singletary. Singletary has been playing absolutely amazing. C.J. Stroud is probably going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year the way he's playing as well. I mean, 21 touchdown passes, just 5 interceptions, and 156 yards, topping the 4,000-yard mark despite missing 2 games with a concussion. So he's playing absolutely amazing. The Colts, though, have been a really surprising team this year. Like you just said, Zach, I mean, the resilience that this team has showed has been just absolutely amazing. Veteran Gardner Minshew, he's been playing absolutely amazing. He's been beyond just a playmaker for the Colts. He's been winning games for the Colts, and he's been the reason that they've been so successful. So definitely earning his money, definitely earning his spot as a backup quarterback however longer he's going to be in the league. Of course, he is getting older. My only other point from this game, the health of Will Anderson will be a question. He did return last week after missing 2 games with that ankle injury. He was back on the field, but he didn't look 100%, and he played limited snaps and had only 2 sacks as well. So that's something to look out for. Will Anderson, of course, if he does play, will be a huge, huge difference maker that will help swing the game. But this is going to be an awesome game, Zach. Of course, when they played in week 2, 31-20 Colts victory, but these teams do always play each other very, very well, of course, being divisional rivals. And I agree with you, Zach. I think it's going to be the closest game of the week. Justin, what is your closest game of the week?
I'll go with the Dolphins and the Bills. I don't think it's going to be a shootout, but I think it's going to be a very much closer game than just a 30, game in the 30s. Probably get up to 28 points, maybe even 31 points. But I see a very close one here in Miami with the Bills and the Dolphins.
Most intriguing storyline, Zach. What is your most intriguing storyline?
Yeah, you could go a lot of ways with this, obviously, with the playoffs, but I think Bills-Dolphins is the most intriguing game. No question about it, because as we mentioned, Buffalo, you talk about they can either be the 2 seed and AFC East champs, or they could be out of the playoffs. We'll know by the time the game starts whether they're in the playoffs or not. But the Dolphins haven't beaten too many good teams this year. They beat the Cowboys, but outside of that, they've struggled. I mean, last week against the Ravens, they got torched 56-19. So I'm still a little out on the Dolphins as far as calling them a Super Bowl contender. And if the Bills win this game, they're absolutely a Super Bowl contender. Remember, they housed the Dolphins 47-20 earlier in the season. Josh Allen's playing some of the best football of his career, but now they've got balance with James Cook as their number 1 running back. He's had a string of 100-yard games. So I think this is the perfect choice for game 272 for the last game of the regular season, because there's so many things that are in play here. And I'm sure that if you're a Ravens fan or if you're a Dolphins fan or somebody in the AFC, you probably don't want the Bills to make the playoffs. So I think this is the most intriguing storyline.
I'm going to go with the Eagles. Of course, been a big topic of conversation, not just for us, but particularly for the Eagles. Can they play in the second half? Eagles, of course, will play Giants this weekend. It's not a must-win, obviously, but it basically is a must-win heading into the playoffs, especially with the rhetoric around the Eagles and the fan base being pissed off more than ever with the team. But like I said, the second half specifically, I want to see the Eagles play better. Giants, they should be up on the Giants at halftime. Like I said, of course, being that way better team and having a lot to prove. But the Eagles have been up at halftime the last 3 games, but are only 1-2 in those games. And they allowed a combined 68 points over the final 2 quarters over those last 3 games as well. So even if the Eagles are up on the Giants at halftime, I'm still not going to be confident about the Eagles because they've been playing just absolutely abysmal after halftime in the second half over their last 3 games. So that's really what I want to see. I mean, I think it'll be great to be up at halftime, but I want to see the Eagles play better, in the second the last 2 quarters of the game and really just put a team away, especially a team like the Giants, who they're a lot better than. So that's my most intriguing storyline. Can the Eagles play a full 4 quarters, and not just flame out in the final 2 quarters of a game? Justin, what is your most intriguing storyline?
Will Bill Belichick win his final game, potentially final game, at home against the Jets? I think the answer is yes, but I think that, but yeah, if this is Bill Belichick's final game, if this isn't, that is the most intriguing storyline for me, is how will the Patriots kind of respond to Bill Belichick's final game, if it's his final game as Patriots coach.
Surprise of the week. Zach, what is your surprise of the week?
Man, this is tough just because you don't know who's going to be playing as far as quarterbacks or whatever. But you know what? I'm going to go with the Titans to knock off the Jaguars. I don't like how Jacksonville's been playing as of late. They started 8-3. They've not been playing very good football. Trevor Lawrence has been banged up. The running game's been inconsistent. Offensive line's been inconsistent. And I'll tell you this, Mike Vrabel will have that team ready to go. Could be Derrick Henry's last game in Tennessee, so I think they're going to want to send him out the right way. Ryan Tannehill is actually starting this game, so it's a little bit of a surprise perhaps there. The Jaguars-Titans have always played each other tight. The Titans have traditionally been pretty good in this series in recent memory, and I guarantee you that the Titans remember last year, Week 18, the Jaguars won that game, won the division, knocked them out of the playoffs. I think Mike Vrabel is going to want to use this for revenge. I think the Titans beat the Jags at home.
I'm going to go with Bears-Packers. I don't know how much of a surprise this is. Bears have been playing really good the second half of the season. Justin Fields has been playing really good. They're 6th in rushing in the league, and they're actually 4th in stopping the run as well. Bears, that was a big problem that they had earlier in the season. Their passing has gotten better, of course, with Justin Fields coming back. Their passing defense has gotten better. Packers, their whole team is injured. It sounds like they have just ravaged with injuries. Of course, this is a must win for the Packers, kind of like we talked about earlier with the playoff scenarios. They need to win this game to make the playoffs. But yeah, give me the Bears playing spoiler with the Packers. Of course, the Bears would love to play spoilers with the Packers. The divisional rival for a very, very long time. A lot of history of the team, and yeah, it would definitely be a win that the Bears would like to have over their North rival. So give me the Bears over the Packers as my surprise of the week. Justin, what is your surprise of the week?
I'm going to go with the Falcons over the Saints. I think the Saints definitely a big win last week in Tampa Bay, but I think they are going to lose at home to the Falcons. Could be a divisional upset here.
We might all have the same shootout, but Zach, what is your shootout of the week?
Yeah, is it the game in Miami? I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think it's Bills Dolphins. With these two offenses, I think both these teams are going to get in the 30s. Tua, Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle sounds like he'll be able to go in this game, and if that's the case, they'll have their full arsenal. And the Bills' offense has been dynamic these last couple weeks. Josh Allen didn't play particularly great last week. I think he's going to want to rebound in a big way. Bills Dolphins is the shootout.
Yeah, mine too. Stephon Diggs has to play better. He has not had a 100-yard receiving game since week 6, and he's now gone 4 games now without 50 receiving yards or a touchdown. So Stephon Diggs, I don't know what happened to him. Of course, the Bills are definitely going to need him, not just in this game, but especially if they go on to the playoffs. They're going to need him badly. Allen did not respond well to the pressure set on him last week against the Pats. That was noticeable. Dolphins are a little bit battered, though. Of course, Dolphins will be without Bradley Chubb and likely without Xavier Howard as well. Rasheed Mostert and Waddle have been banged up in the previous weeks as well. So it's going to be a high-scoring game, but Stephon Diggs needs to show up. Dolphins definitely are pretty injured right now, and of course they struggle against good teams as well. So I don't expect a lot of defense in this game. I think this game will be won by the offense. It's basically just going to be whoever scores more points. And that's why I do think it's going to be, it's going to be the shootout of the week. And Justin, is this going to be yours as well? Is this what your shootout of the week is?
No, I'm going to go with Colts Texans. So I know you guys have the Dolphins and Bills as the shootout, and Colts Texans as the closest game, but I had the opposite. Dolphins and Bills being my closest games, Colts Texans as my shootout. These offenses are very underrated in this game for the Colts and the Texans, so I think it's going to be a higher scoring game actually than the Bills and Dolphins. Yeah,
my last point on the Bills and Dolphins, Buffalo is actually really good at keeping Tyreek Hill contained.
Yeah.
He only has 31 catches and 284 yards and a TD in his 6 regular season meetings with the Bills. So overall, the Bills are really good at keeping Tyreek Hill contained. That might be another factor that could, be an issue for the Dolphins, and that's just something we have to keep an eye on. So Yeah, hopefully Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill can both show out on Sunday and make this a high-scoring affair. Again, probably have the same snoozer as well, but Zach, what is your snoozer of the week?
Jets Patriots. This game is not going to be fun in any sort of way whatsoever. Neither team's playing for anything. This is going to be a low-scoring game. If anybody watches this, I question your sanity.
Yeah, this is going to be my snoozer of the week too. Zach, Justin, probably yours as well. The game has absolutely no implications whatsoever. Like you said, Justin, this might be Bill Belichick's final game in New England. Jets would love to play spoiler to the Patriots. Of course, they have a long history as well, being divisional rivals. It's going to be two solid defenses and probably the worst offenses in the NFL, and that basically just leads for a very, very boring game, a very low-scoring game. It's going to be a close game, but that's mostly just because it's going to probably be like 3-6 in the fourth quarter, and nothing's going to happen leading up to that fourth quarter. Yeah,
my snoozer as well will be Jets Patriots. I know it's kind of intriguing. It's Belichick's final game in New England, but yeah, this could be in a tie. This could be a low scoring game as well.
Rams, favorite of the week. Zach, what is your favorite of the week?
I expect the Cowboys to take care of business against the Commanders. They've pretty much given up on Ron Rivera. The Commanders have just sank recently, and Dallas beat them 45-10 on Thanksgiving earlier in the season. Cowboys are going to play all their starters in this game because they need to win it to win the NFC East. And I know they haven't been great on the road, but the Commanders are not a particularly good team, so I don't think it matters in this case. So I'm taking Dallas.
Yeah, the only NFC East team that the Commanders play well against is really the Eagles, and obviously not playing the Eagles. So yeah, Cowboys are gonna have a field day with the Commanders. I'm gonna take my favorite of the week though, Rams over the Niners, and that's really just because the Niners are going to sit a lot of people, and the Rams have been playing.
49ers are actually still favored.
Really,
yeah.
Even with sitting like their entire team, that's surprising though, because I mean Rams have everything to play for this week, and the Niners have nothing to play for. And Rams have been playing really well too. Puka Nacua, excuse me. He needs 29 more yards to set the NFL record for rookie receiving yards. So that's obviously something to look out for. Something that he, I'm sure, desperately wants as well. Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I'm gonna take the Rams over the Niners. There's absolutely no reason for the Niners to even play this game, and Rams are playing for something, like I said. So, yeah, give me the Rams over the Niners. Justin, what is your favorite of the week?
I'm going to go with the Bucs over the Panthers. I think this is an easy lock. The Panthers, they're done. We know their season's over, and it's going to be a 2-15 finish in Carolina because it looks like the Bucs, if I'm corrected, yes, the Bucs will win the NFC South with a win in this game.
Let's get ready for the national championship game, guys. Switching over to college football Monday night, of course, Michigan versus Washington. I mean, it's a lot to get into with this game. It's going to be a really good game. I'll start with you, Zach, though. I mean, what's your prediction for this game? I mean, who do you think comes out? I think it's going to be Washington. I think you might feel the same way as well. Or what do you think on this game? How do you think it's going to turn out?
Yeah, putting bias aside, I'm picking Washington to win this game, and the reason why is because they've felt like a team of destiny all year. They're 7-0 in one-score games, and Michigan really hasn't been tested too much. They got tested by Ohio State. They got tested by Alabama. That secondary has not seen a passing game like what they're going to see with Washington. They've got one of the best receiver cores in the country with Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan. And you got Dylan Johnson, who's really improved as a running back these last couple weeks. I think there's 4 positions on the field that matter more than anything else. Quarterback, linemen, receivers, and pass rush. Washington is very good in all 4 of those things. And I think this game is going to get down to the fourth quarter. I don't think Michigan's going to be able to run over this Washington defense. And I'm going to take Michael Penix over J.J. McCarthy in the fourth quarter. Washington has been there, done that with close games this year. And they just feel like, as I mentioned, feels like a team of destiny. Special teams has been very good for the Huskies as well. It's been a bit of an issue for Michigan, as we saw in the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. I'm taking Washington to win this game. I think it's a barn burner. I like Washington 34-31.
Yeah, people forget, not that this really matters, but people forget that Penix actually played Michigan before back in 2020 when he was
pretty good in that game too.
Yeah, he threw for 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, and led the Hoosiers to a 38-21 win. So yeah, I mean, like I said, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Different team at this point, and Penix himself is different. But yeah, Penix, of course, at the Sugar Bowl, it was his fourth 400-yard performance of the season, and it increased his season total to 4,648 yards, moving past Bo Nix for the first in the nation. He's absolutely been playing amazing. I mean, this is going to be basically a matchup of Washington's offense versus Michigan's defense. But let me ask you this. I mean, if Penix can come out and play like he did in the Sugar Bowl, do you think he's going to – I mean, not to state the obvious, but, I mean, just what do you think of his chances of moving further up in the draft board just over 1 or 2 games?
Oh, yeah, he's going to move up in the draft order. I think he's already doing that regardless of whether they win this game or not, because I think he's the most accurate quarterback in this draft class, even more than Caleb Williams or Drake May. If Michael Penix didn't have the injury history that he has, he'd probably be a consensus top 5 pick, maybe even just a top 10 pick. But Michael Penix is outstanding, and I think his play the last couple weeks, he's moving up the board quickly.
Yeah, his age, though, of course, is a problem. I know I've heard a lot of people saying too, because he's been in college for so long, he might have just gotten more used to college, and the transition to the NFL might be a little bit difficult for him, especially with the faster and stronger talent that there is in the NFL. But I mean, you watch him play though. I mean, he's definitely a mobile quarterback. He can definitely run out of tough situations, and he can throw the ball better than any NFL quarterback even right now. Maybe not any, but he's definitely in line and definitely has a talent as a thrower to compete and be productive in the NFL. That's for sure. But yeah, like I said, I mean, Washington's offensive line, this is going to be a huge game for them, like it's been all year. Joe Moore, of course, for the Huskies, he won the best offensive lineman this year. So Texas didn't really get any pressure on them during the Sugar Bowl. Michigan's defense has tallied, though, 38 sacks so far this season, and they blitz better than pretty much any team in the league. So, yeah, it's going to be just an absolute offensive matchup versus a stellar defense. So it's going to be really, really fun to watch, and I'm going to take Washington to win this game. And Justin, what about you? I mean, what is your pick for this game? Who do you see coming out on top on Monday night?
I see Washington winning this game. I think Washington has the better quarterback, the better team. I think they come out and maybe not blow out Michigan. I think this is a closer game. I mean, the highest points, I think, highest deficit for Michigan, highest probably 10-point win for Washington, maybe even less than a 10-point win, which I see.
Another big takeaway is obviously Penix had a field day against Texas at the Sugar Bowl, but Michigan's secondary played really, really well against Alabama at the Rose Bowl. So that's going to be something to look out for too. I don't know if he might not have the same ease as he had at the Sugar Bowl throwing the ball, because Michigan, like I said, the secondary for Michigan surprisingly showed up and were just dominant against Alabama and Milroe, and gave Milroe a really tough time throwing the ball. So I want to see if Michigan can kind of come out again on Monday night and have their secondary play the same way they played at the Rose Bowl, because if they do, Penix might have a trouble. He might have more trouble throwing the ball than he did at the Sugar Bowl, and it might make the game a little bit more interesting and bring back the Wolverines or the Huskies, offense back down to earth a little bit. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think we're all in line, all three of us, picking the Huskies over Michigan on Monday night, and we'll see what happens. National championship game coming up. Writer's block of the week. Zach, we'll start with you. What is your writer's block of the week?
Yeah, Pat McAfee just basically called a high-ranking official of ESPN a rat and releasing the numbers on the Pat McAfee show a little bit early, because they are the only ones that would know that the numbers have not been all that great as of late, and they kind of linked that to the New York Post. And you combine that with what's happened this week with the whole Aaron Rodgers interview. Things aren't going too particularly well for Pat McAfee at ESPN, which I'm not surprised about, because ESPN is known for stifling a lot of their top talent, and they're doing that with Pat McAfee. The vibe that he gives off and the vibe that ESPN tries to give off are very, very different. So I don't know if this is going to last a whole lot longer. I know it's a 5-year deal. I would be very surprised if McAfee is there for 5 years, even with doing College Game Day and doing his show. The quality of his show has not been the same since he went to ESPN, and they say he's supposed to have full creative control. I don't know that they're actually allowing full creative control. So, calling out one of your bosses usually doesn't end too well.
Yeah, no, it was a weird when it first happened, when he first signed with ESPN, I thought it was really weird. I mean, like you said, Zach, his vibe is just completely different. ESPN is so buttoned up, and he's not, off the walls by any means, but he's
No.
definitely, he's definitely not like, he's not going to wear a suit and tie. Let's just say that every day or ever. And, I think it was just a weird kind of marriage to begin with when it first happened. My writer's block, I feel like I'm always mentioning something with Rodgers for my writer's block, but ESPN did come out with a headline the other day, voting Rodgers the most inspirational player by the Jets.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know what he did. I mean, all he was doing all year long was pretty much just saying that he was going to come back, never actually came back. And I guess that was enough to make him the most inspirational player by his colleagues at the Jets. So yeah, good for him, Rodgers, inspiring his Jets to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. But I guess we'll see more on that later as it comes. Justin, writer's block this week?
The jersey swapping, obviously, now in the NBA. So Robin Lopez swapped jerseys with the mascot of the Spurs. I mean, that's just funny and interesting, but the jersey swapping should be more private than public. I think that's why people are get very upset with the jersey swapping. But I think that if you want to swap jersey with a mascot or another player in football or basketball, whichever sport, just keep it private. I mean, apparently everybody doesn't. Not everybody, but people don't like it. So maybe keep it a little private.
What would they do? Like going to each other's locker room, or like I feel like there's no other way to really do it besides doing it on the field because it's
right. But for the media, not to overshow it too much.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. Let's move on. Valerie Preactor, Baltimore, WBAL sports reporter, sports anchor for the station, breaking down the Ravens. Ravens, of course, winning the AFC, clinching the AFC. Lamar Jackson and the whole team sitting out this weekend. Talk to her about the season so far. Why this season seems different than other seasons. Of course, they've had some bad luck in the playoffs these past couple of years, but why is this year different besides just the team being healthy? And talk some Orioles as well. Orioles, of course, had a unfortunate ending to their season, despite record-breaking as it was, and what they have to do going into next year to be a dominant team yet again in the MLB. So, without further ado, let's head to Baltimore and talk to Valerie. Okay, heading to Baltimore, talking to Valerie Preactor. Valerie, it's been a long time since we had you on. I think we had you on before the NFL season started. I'm not really sure, but WBAL sports anchor and reporter at WBAL News Radio in Baltimore. Love to have you on again. Had to have you on again. Ravens absolutely cruising right now, winning the AFC. Second time in history. I was actually surprised to hear only the second time in history the Ravens have actually won the AFC. And the playoffs in the AFC, of course, will be going through Baltimore now. Let's start with the Ravens, though, of course. Just in general, I mean, how pumped is this city right now? I mean, the way they're playing, it seems like they're peaking at the right time. Obviously had a little bit of stumbles midway through the season with a couple of games that they had, but there's no denying over these last 3-4 weeks, this team is the best team in the league and the perennial favorites, I think, by a lot of people's minds to come away and win the Super Bowl, of course, if the team stays healthy.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. The vibe right now in Baltimore is ecstatic. Everyone is so excited. This is the first time that the Ravens have the number one seed again since 2019, and that was Lamar Jackson's MVP year. So we're kind of seeing history repeat itself, especially with Lamar Jackson now beating out Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, it shows you how much that the Ravens can go against premier teams in the league and absolutely squander their chances against the Baltimore Ravens. So I think it's pretty cool right now because everything is really working for them. They're hitting on all cylinders, and they've been doing it without some of their key players. I think that you look at the 49ers and a couple other teams, they have health on their side. They haven't lost any guys to permanent injuries or for season-long injuries like the Ravens had all year long. They went into the season and they thought they were going to have J.K. Dobbins. He tears his Achilles in the first game. Then they were kind of cruising for a little bit without him, figuring out the running game. They saw Keaton Mitchell, liked him, was working with him. He goes down with a knee injury. And that happened right after Mark Andrews, their security blanket for Lamar Jackson. He goes down with an ankle injury. He could be back now that their playoff hopes are severely alive. I mean, this is a team that's worked with their top 3 players down. Ronnie Stanley at left tackle hasn't been his best all season long, and their offensive line is still killing it. So I think it shows you that this team is able to work with what they have. Their adaptability is unlike any other team, and it wasn't like that in the past. Sometimes we'd seen Lamar Jackson really put the entire game on his shoulders, and now he has a lot more receivers to go to, and you're just seeing everything kind of be spread evenly throughout this team, and that's what's really working for them. So I think they're in a good spot, and you'll get into it, I'm sure, but they picked up another running back just last night, which was breaking news about Dalvin Cook, and we didn't think that they would be picking up anybody at this point. So the fact that they're still making additions to be the better team and be the best team in the league, which they are right now, as their record is the best in the league at 13-3, they believe that they should be probably 16-0 with those 3 losses that you mentioned midway through. I mean, those were games that they should have won, and they still think that. So they're going into every game thinking that they're undefeated, and they're still viewing themselves as the underdog, which seemed to be working for them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll break into Dalvin Cook now. Obviously, that came out I think it was last night, right? Yeah, that came out. Yeah. Time goes so fast anymore. But yeah, Wednesday night, we're recording, Thursday night, excuse me, we're recording this on Friday. Dalvin Cook is going to the Ravens. It's interesting, though, because this rushing attack, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this too, has been explosive this year. I mean, they've always been known for their rushing, and their passing, of course, have gotten a lot better this year too. We'll get into that in a second, but just talk about the rushing attack and how they were able to really put that together this year. I mean, like I said, they've always been known as a rushing team, always been known as a team that rushes the ball very well, but something just seems different this year, doesn't it, about this rushing team? Like they run the ball down people's throats. They can't stop the run. Nobody can stop the run. And of course, Lamar Jackson just being that dual threat is also contributing to all that as well.
You're right. And they faced a lot of teams that had said they had the number 1 defense against the run, and they've absolutely blistered teams with their run game. Like you said, Lamar Jackson, the numbers wouldn't say that he is that MVP caliber, and we'll probably get into that later too, but he is leading the team in rushing yards. Yeah. So he's closer to 1,000 rushing yards than Gus Edwards. So, and Gus Edwards has been their back the entire year. He's the one that stayed healthy. He's the one who's gotten the angry runs scepter from Good Morning Football, which I always love. But he has been the mainstay, as well as Justice Hill, who we saw a lot of last weekend. Justice Hill got his first receiving touchdown ever. I mean, he was incredible, and he's done a great job on special teams, too. He had almost an 80-yard return on a punt, which was incredible. And so you are seeing a little bit more of that rushing from the Ravens that we saw more like in that 2019 season. So remember, there were a couple years where we didn't have Gus Edwards and we didn't have J.K. Dobbins. They both were out with injuries. So now that they were on the other side of that, especially with Gus, he's that big body guy that you like to get through the middle, and he's shown that on third down, he's the guy. And so he leads the team right now with 13 rushing touchdowns. And so for him to be that number 1 rusher, and then of course Lamar Jackson is still, teams just can't get him down. They can't tackle him. We saw that against the Jaguars. And we saw Miami break down that film and say, you can't go high, he'll spin out. You can't go low, he's a runner. This is the type of player that teams literally don't know how to face. And they don't know how to adapt the way that he does. And I think that's a real credit to Todd Monken and the offensive coordinator coming in this year and completely changing the complexion of this rushing offense, which, like you said, it's still known to be a rushing offense, but now it's more 50-50. We are seeing a lot more passing from Lamar Jackson, which everyone was hoping for. We were waiting to see that arm talent really come into play, and we've seen a lot more of it this year.
Were people surprised that they picked up Dalvin Cook? I mean, you just mentioned it at length, how well they've been running the ball. And I mean, was there what was the motivation behind getting Dalvin Cook? Was it just because, hey, why not? I mean, Dobbins is out, of course, and we might as well just try to boost her up as much as we can on offense, going into the playoffs. Like, were fans just kind of like surprised by this signing? Like I said, just given how well they have been playing, at the line of scrimmage.
And it's a great pickup. I mean, I think that that's what Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Ravens, and that's what Coach Harbaugh, they look for. They look for great additions no matter what the time of year is. They always have their finger on the pulse of what's going on around the league. And when Dalvin Cook was released by the Jets earlier this week, and then he kind of just sat on waivers, that was a perfect excuse for the Ravens to say, we're going to take a chance on him, even though he hasn't been playing well. Their team hasn't been playing well. So you can't look for what the team has been doing compared to what the running back can do. And I relate to this kind of the way that the Orioles look at players. They pick players that are kind of struggling, and they go in with their coaches and they help bring that person back out of their shell, and they make them a better player. And we've seen that a lot from the Orioles, but we've also seen it from the Ravens. Look at how many one-year deal guys the Ravens had that teams had given up on, like Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy. OBJ was just a free agent sitting there. They have made these players reach personal best this year like they haven't in years. And I think that's a credit to not only the coaches, but to the front office too, just looking at what's there. And so we were at the Castle yesterday at the Ravens facility talking to Coach Harbaugh, and from my understanding, we didn't know anything about the Dalvin Cook pickup at that point. And so I even talked to Melvin Gordon, who came into last week's game, scored a touchdown. He was the backup running back that was kind of sitting on the practice squad as a veteran all season long. And once J.K. Dobbins went out with that injury, they saw Keaton Mitchell as kind of that shining light. And then he goes down to an injury. And even though they were without him last week and they did well without him, you can't go into the playoffs really with only 3 starting running backs. I mean, that wouldn't even be the case because Melvin Gordon, it's really just Justice Hill and Gus Edwards that are the mainstays. So to bring in a 4th guy like you were at full strength, I think that's smart of them to do, considering how far they want to go.
Yeah. One of the, I want to go on the passing, you mentioned Odell Beckham Jr., a lot of other guys in the passing game as well. One of the biggest critiques the Ravens always had, having trouble getting past that divisional round, was that they didn't really have any passing attack. And I think this year is a really good example of how when you do make your offense a little bit more modernized and you bring in some, passing threat, some receivers that can be a threat and, really open up the field, I think it's really showing that it pays off for the Ravens. And, I think it's a word I've heard a lot of times, and I'm sure you've heard it too, is the Ravens offense seems to be a lot more modernized this year. They're not just relying strictly on their running attack like we've already talked about at length already, but they actually brought in these guys that are threats on the outside. You brought in Beckham Jr., Say Flowers is playing amazing, obviously. So just talk to me about that and, finally just utilizing the pass game more. And I know the fans, I'd love to hear the fans' takes on this too. If you can speak on that, just how excited and how happy the fans are that they're finally utilizing a passing game. Because that's something I know the fans have been clamoring for a long time now.
Yeah, it was a huge area of need for the Ravens going into this offseason, looking at what they were able to do in the past. You mentioned it before. They were known for rushing. And so for them to say, we've got that down, we have our running backs, let's focus on what we need to do and bring in a wide receiver like Odell Beckham Jr., pairing that with Zay Flowers in the draft. And then you're getting guys that are healthy again, like Rashad Bateman. And you brought in Nelson Aguilar too, which he kind of flies under the radar. But each of them are important, and they've all helped this team in measurable ways. I mean, OBJ might not be the number 1 guy, but he will make at least one incredible play and have one incredible catch every single game. And that's important because those are scoring drives. And so every single play counts. And so we saw a little bit in the beginning. Now, it took a process. It was very hard to see at the beginning of the year what they were working on. And it seemed like Lamar Jackson was uncomfortable. He didn't know how to work things. When you have too much of a variety, it's almost like it gets lost in the mix and you can't see what's going on in the field. And now I think Lamar Jackson is way more comfortable working with Todd Monken, having his own design runs, and then, of course, design plays that fall into place where he can throw a 75-yard touchdown to Zay Flowers. That was what I think the fans were waiting for, because we had seen 20-yard throws, 30-yard passes, but we were waiting for those those moments where Lamar Jackson was going to unleash. And we've seen all the different crazy arm angles that he's able to throw, where his feet are too. They're in the air, they're faced the other way. I mean, he's falling down and throwing these passes. It's so much like Patrick Mahomes that Lamar Jackson isn't getting the credit for how versatile he is in what happens in the pocket. And we've seen a lot more of Lamar Jackson throwing from the pocket than we had in the past. And he's got a lot more time, thanks to the offensive line giving him the time of day to see what's on the field, do his checkdowns. And so I think the fans are really happy about that. And they have every reason to. They finally have a receiving core in 2023 going into 2024 now that like they haven't had for years. I mean, people are saying that Zay Flowers is the best wide receiver that they've drafted ever, maybe since probably Torrey Smith. And he's just shattered Torrey Smith's rookie receiving record already. So I doubt we'll see him this weekend in the regular season finale, but don't worry, Zay Flowers isn't finished yet. So he's getting ready to play his rookie season in the postseason, and he's going to make an incredible impact.
Do you think the offensive line was one of the most unsung biggest improvements this year? I mean, I think it's underlooked a lot of the times, not just for the Ravens, but many teams, if not all teams, especially when you have Lamar Jackson. You're known for your defense as well, which we'll get into in a second. But do you think that's been one of the most underlooked things for the Ravens, fan base wise, going into this season as an improvement of last year?
100%. I mean, you look at who they pretty much untouched going into this year, besides bringing in a new left guard, which is, I believe, John Simpson. I think he's left. So it's very different when you bring in a guard like that, because there's so much compatibility along that line that stems from the center to the outside tackles, which are so important in Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses, who they've done an incredible job, but both of them have missed time. Almost everybody, I believe, on the line has missed time this year for different things. Even the center, Tyler Linderbaum, who I talked to this week, and he's a Pro Bowler in his second year, and he was a first-round pick in 2022, I believe. And everyone kept saying, why are you picking a center in the first round? That's why, because he's a Pro Bowler. So, I mean, there's no better explanation than that to show you how consistent this offensive line is. And they've gone through games where they didn't let a single sack in to Lamar Jackson. That's an incredible feat. I mean, most offensive lines can't do that. And you've seen them go against defenses that have Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald, I mean, an incredible array of players that are future Hall of Famers. TJ Watt, they're going to face him this weekend. And they've been able to shut them down and silence their defenses. And that is a huge testament to the offensive linemen and the way that they grind every single game.
It seems like for the first time really ever, this team is healthy going into the playoffs. And does that kind of create a more of, I don't want to say like more expectations obviously are already very, very high for this team, but is there kind of this sentiment and kind of this idea now of there's no excuses to not go all the way, given that this team is so healthy? I mean, we'll get to the defense in a second. Defense is just playing absolutely amazing. We spent so much time talking right now on the offense, but the defense as well is playing just absolutely lights out as well. Mike McDonald, his second year in the season, or his second year at the Ravens, I should say. I mean, leads the league in takeaways, sacks, fewest points per game allowed. I think he has the fewest total points allowed out of any team in the NFL, fewest yards per passing attempt, and he's the second fewest in yards per play as well. So this defense, I mean, is absolutely cooking as well along with this offense. So is this kind of a sentiment now with this fan base that there's really no excuse to not go all the way to the big game, all the way to Las Vegas this year?
Yeah, for that part about health, I do believe that you're right. But we're cautiously optimistic because we know that anything can happen in a split second in a game like this. And that's why you're seeing a lot of guys being rested for this week 18 finale, because they don't need all those guys out there to win. And they're still planning to win this game. There's still a belief that their backups are better than whatever the Steelers have to offer, which is still their backup quarterback, and whatever offense that they have is working, and their defense as well. But it's still an NFL team. They're not underestimating that, but they're convinced that they can still play a team better than they could with their starters. So I think that's a good mindset to go into this game as, and it just gives more guys rest, which is obviously what they need to stay healthy. We've seen guys at this point in the season, I've talked to so many of them, they all have underlying, injuries that everybody's dealing with. Everyone's sore. This is a tough physical game. It's violent, and there's nobody that's 100% healthy like you and I are feeling every single day. We're not getting this type of impact. So for them to continue to win, beat up, and I give them so much credit. But to your point about the defense, look, defenses win championships. That's what you hear every single year. Yep. So I think for this year, Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen to be those inside linebackers that are both Pro Bowls, they're going for Roquan's second time, Patrick Queen his first time. For them to be the AFC both nodded to the Pro Bowl, that says they are the best linebackers in the league, at least on this side of things, on the AFC. Yep. But that is a huge testament. That's a huge testament. Oh, yeah. So I think that they control everything else. And we've seen other guys get involved, obviously, the rest of the secondary with Geno Stone and all the interceptions that he's had. Kyle Hamilton's having an incredible year. Sacks, interceptions, return for a touchdown. I mean, he got nominated to the Pro Bowl as well. This is the Ravens' year. And so I think you're right. It's kind of like Super Bowl or bust at this point, and I think the players feel that way too.
Yeah, and you reiterated too. I mean, nobody is healthy at this point of the year. I mean, you might not be injured to the point where you're out of a game, but nobody is like healthy this time of the year. But it does seem like the AFC is really open for the first time. I mean, AFC has always been the dominant conference. Now it actually seems like the NFC is more the dominant conference, and we've talked about it on this show at length a couple of times how this year has kind of been a reverse of roles where the NFC is more of the juggernaut and the AFC has been kind of a question mark. I mean, you look at Kansas City, they're a big time question mark right now. Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars, he's injured. Jaguars aren't playing good. Houston, young. Browns, I mean, Flacco's playing really good, of course, so that's something you have to look out for. But Steelers obviously have been a question mark this whole year. But Bills, question mark. Miami can't beat a good team. So it really does seem like this. Now, I would like to get your thoughts on this too. Like, it seems like the AFC is pretty open, especially, for a path to go to Vegas.
I'm going to disagree with you because when you look at the NFC teams, all of them they're great. And there are so many of them. You look at the 49ers, maybe the Seahawks. I mean, the Rams are kind of still there. These are teams that the Ravens have all beat considerably. I mean, maybe not the Rams, but they showed what they can do against NFC teams. And I think for the AFC, not that it's open, but it's just surprising at who's still there. It's not the normal AFC that we've been used to for the last 5 years with the Chiefs. It's now, the Ravens? Wait, the Browns? Wait, what's going on? These are teams that were not expected to be at the top of the AFC, but are. The Dolphins, they're good, but they're really not that good. The Bills, we've seen them lose a lot this year. On the other side of things with the NFC and the Cowboys, I don't know why people still believe in the Cowboys. They're not winning. I promise you that. Like, if they are, then I'll do something for all that say that they will, because I don't believe that there's a lot of faith there. And they've nothing to prove that they can go farther than they've ever gone before. They haven't. So they can't win away, just like the Dolphins. You said that. So I believe that it's not that the AFC is open. It's just different. And so we're finally entering that modern day. Now this is what it looks like. Like, it's going to change every year. And it's funny you mentioned Houston, because you go through these seasons all the time where they have down seasons, the Lions for so long, and now they're on the uptick. This is just what happens in every single sport. I mean, you go through down years where you don't have a franchise quarterback. You don't have the right coach. Nothing's working. Everybody's injured. Everybody goes through that season. Now, it happened for the Ravens. They had a really down year the past couple of years where they were down with injury. Now they're finally healthy. Things are working. They have the team that they need. You could say that about a bunch of other teams on both sides. So I think it's just the way that the cards kind of fall where they may. And look, it's not going to be the Chiefs' year. It's just not. And I think a lot of people are realizing that, and they are taking that into account and saying, okay, well, who else do I have to look at for the AFC? And they just start ticking off names of different teams, because it's going to come down to the best two. And I know that we probably did see one of the previews on Christmas night with the 49ers and the Ravens, because right now, even though the Ravens beat the 49ers, you never know what could happen. But those teams right now to me are the top 2 teams.
Yeah, of course, Ravens, 49ers being having the most Pro Bowlers go. Niners have 9 going to the Pro Bowl. Ravens have 7. So, but I mean, fans have to be very optimistic if they get to the big game. They'll get to the Super Bowl because Lamar Jackson, I think, what is he, like 19-1 against NFC opponents? What is it again? Like, what is it about him against NFC opponents? Like, do you have anything that you can place on to that? Like, what is it about him that's so good against NFC teams?
And I believe he's 20-1 now with that Niners beatdown, but I think it's because the NFC doesn't face him all that much. I mean, they get to see, especially the AFC North, they get the Steelers, the Browns, the Bengals are so familiar with what Lamar Jackson can do, but the Niners are not. I mean, they hadn't faced them in 5 years. And so I believe that all those teams, they're way across the country, as for most of them, like Seattle, the Rams. And so, I mean, I would even say those teams that they play, even in the AFC, like the Chargers, don't really know what Lamar Jackson can do, because even when you see him in one game, the next time that you see him, which is going to be however many months, years later, it's changed. He's evolved. He's gotten better. He can do things differently. And so NFC teams that don't see him all the time are going to say that. And, you know, the Jacksonville Jaguars had the Ravens number for a while, and they still, I think, lead the all-time series, but they're hard to play against. And now that even when they were bad, remember the Ravens were still losing to the Jaguars when they were in their down years. So now that they're kind of back on top, and I know that they kind of hurt Trevor Lawrence in that game, but they're realizing that they can really bulldoze any team right now, especially the NFC, because they can take advantage of what they don't know. And I think that's really what helps Lamar.
So Lamar Jackson, 2019, unanimous, of course, in his MVP voting. We talked about it on Thursday a little bit between us 3. It's pretty much in the bag at this point that he won MVP. I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you. Anyone, ESPN, and it doesn't matter what you're listening to, who you're talking to, everyone's pretty much saying the same thing. Lamar Jackson is going to win MVP. What are your chances? I mean, what do you think of the chances of him being unanimous again, like he was in 2019?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be unanimous at this point, because I think Brock Purdy is still a really viable option. Look, he's the first Niners quarterback that has been selected to the Pro Bowl since 2002. Was he even alive in 2002 is the real question. I don't even think so. So that's a huge testament to the 49ers and what they've been able to do and turn things around with their backup quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant, who I give the Niners a lot of credit. And I think Kyle Shanahan has things running really well over there. But I don't believe that Lamar Jackson will be the unanimous MVP. I don't think he should be the MVP at all. I think it should be either Brock Purdy. I think it should be Christian McCaffrey. I don't know why Tyreek Hill isn't in that conversation. Those guys have been the MVPs of their team. So not to say that Lamar Jackson hasn't been the MVP of this team. He has. There's no doubt about it. But I know that in his mind, and he's said this on countless occasions, he doesn't want that. It's great to be in the conversation. He wants the Super Bowl MVP. That's the one that he wants. And that's the one that he should get this year, not the regular league MVP, because that can go to anybody who doesn't win the Super Bowl. That's the difference. When you get the regular league MVP, you don't win the Super Bowl. It's just, I mean, you do, but if you're Patrick Mahomes or whatever, but that's not what he's looking for right now.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, Ravens just have so many guys, and so you think it'd be more Brock Purdy or Chris McCaffrey just because they probably do more for the team than maybe Lamar Jackson does for the team. Not that, like you said, not that Lamar Jackson isn't amazing, but you just think that because the Ravens are so stacked on the amount of guys that they have, you just think it might go to somebody from the Niners just because of the impact that they make to that team.
And not to say that the Ravens can't have an MVP caliber teammate. They do. Mm-hmm. But I think it's been such a team effort, and it has been for the Niners too. Like, you go down the list of weapons that the Niners have. It's not just Christian McCaffrey. It's Deebo Samuel. It's George Kittle. It's Kyle Juszczyk. They've got a lot of, it's Brandon Ayuk. There's so many, just like the Ravens have. You could go through all the list of their weapons offensively. But I think that Lamar Jackson isn't consistently getting or throwing a touchdown every single game. Right. Or I'm sorry, rushing or throwing a touchdown. Christian McCaffrey can do it 6 ways till Tuesday. He can rush in a touchdown, which he's done consistently for 16 straight games. He can catch touchdown passes receiving wise. He can throw touchdown passes. So I think that I'm really against having the quarterback be the MVP every single year. I just think it's wrong because there's some teams where their quarterback hasn't led them. It's been the defensive guys, which aren't ever going to get an MVP. It's been the running backs who are scoring. It's been Tyreek Hill. He's not going to reach 2,000 yards. If he had, maybe he should have been the MVP. He should be in the conversation because that's an incredible feat that not a lot of other guys can say that they've ever done, literally ever. So that's something that has to be commended with an award like that. So I don't think that every year it has to go to the quarterback. That's just not fair. I mean, there's offensive players of the year. That's not the same meaning. There's defensive players of the year. That's not the same meaning. I think that MVP should be reserved for the most valuable player. And it's hard to judge that in 32 teams of the league, but I don't think it has to be a quarterback every single year.
Yeah, for sure. It always seems to be the quarterback of, one of the teams that won the conference, right? AFC or NFC. Just what it always just kind of seems to be. And McCaffrey this year would be interesting because we talked about it at length too, and I'm sure you've talked about it, off air with people too, or even on air. McCaffrey would be interesting because, all the drama that we had earlier this year before the season started with the running back position. So to have a running back win MVP would be a very awkward thing to happen with given the rhetoric before the season started.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. And that's why I kind of like breaking those barriers. I think he would be the first running back since Adrian Peterson won, if that were the case. So, I mean, you're right. It just shows you how undervalued other positions are. And that's so wrong to me because every position is so valuable. You can't win without a left tackle. You can't win without a running back. And so there's so much of the game that falls, yes, onto the quarterback's shoulders. He's the leader. He's the captain. He facilitates everything on the offense. But we said it before, defenses win championships. Why can't Aaron Donald be the MVP? Why can't Roquan Smith be the MVP? I mean, there's so many different guys that you could say that about. Justin Madubuike, I mean, he falls through the cracks because he's an interior defensive lineman. He's got like the most sacks. He's got 13 sacks already this season. That's for one team. I mean, guys won't even reach that on other teams. So I think that they might have individual within team awards like that. Like I know the Orioles have like the most valuable Oriole. I don't know if they do the most valuable Raven. I'm not sure, but it's something that needs to be considered because there's so many guys that are very well deserving of an MVP, and it doesn't have to be a quarterback. It doesn't have to be the top tier level of offensive guys. You can't forget about the defensive guys.
I like to ask this question. Going into going into the playoffs, I'd like to ask this question. Ravens, of course, are stout on both sides. We just talked about that at length. But what is one thing that the Ravens team in general, or like the fan base, is concerned about? Like, what is the one Achilles heel for the Ravens that we should be looking out for going into the playoffs? It can be just a certain play scheme they'll play against. It can be a certain aspect of their team itself. It can be a team that they don't want to face in the playoffs, in the AFC. Like, what is there something in particular you can pinpoint that's like that it keeps them up at night? The fan base, the team. Is there anything you can like pinpoint?
What keeps me up at night is the potential reality of facing Joe Flacco and the Browns, to be honest with you, because that's a guy that the Ravens know well, and they know January Joe quite too well. And it's so funny because I just talked to Justin Tucker yesterday, and obviously they go way back. So I think for all of these Ravens players who know Joe Flacco, to go up against him at home, that's a real possibility. I mean, with how the Browns are doing, and that's a great defense. It's a great offense with David Njoku and the connection that he and Joe Flacco have created. So that's what keeps me up at night because, the Ravens obviously can win against good teams, but they can also lose to good teams in a really bad way, and they can beat themselves. And so I don't want to say I foresee this, but it's really hard for the Ravens to play another AFC North opponent in the playoffs because they've already played them all of them twice. So I think that was the problem last year where they played the Bengals back to back. They could have won that game against the Bengals if Tyler Huntley didn't fumble the ball, That's the one thing that's the problem for the Ravens. So I think if they face another AFC North opponent, you don't want to do that. I mean, you just don't want to do it. So the Browns keeps me up at night, and I'm sure it keeps up a lot of people because, it'd be so awesome to see Joe Flacco. I know he'd get such a good reception coming back to M&T Bank Stadium because all Baltimore fans love him. but they hate to see him in another jersey that's not the Ravens, and they hate to see him be doing really well.
And you mentioned they played the Bengals twice last year. They might play the Steelers twice this year too.
I know.
That could very well happen. I mean, they're obviously going to rest almost everyone. It sounds like the Ravens, especially Lamar Jackson, this upcoming weekend, Sunday, tomorrow. So, yeah, it just that could be a scenario for sure. If they see the Steelers, one game in the regular season, last game, and then the first game in the playoffs as well. So we'll have to just kind of see how that all turns out. I do want to finish up real fast. I mean, this has been awesome. We really appreciate your time, Valerie, of course. I know we've been going a little bit over here, but real quick question about the Orioles. Orioles, of course, had an amazing season last year. Spring training starting up now. They did lose. They did get swept, but of course that was swept to the Rangers, who ended up winning the World Series. So all things considered, not too bad, not too shady. You can definitely sleep with that at night. But just overall, like what was the fan base kind of saying about this team getting swept in the playoffs? Because at that point, we didn't know the Rangers were going to win the World Series. I don't think a lot of people would have said that the Rangers would have won the World Series even at that point. So were fans really upset? And I know we talked about, when we had you on the first time, the expectations for the Orioles and just making the playoffs alone was a successful season. So did that still hold true when they did lose? They did get swept in the playoffs?
Absolutely. And it's just so incredible because I think they did exceed expectations at the end of the day. My thought was that they were going to get into the wild card, probably maybe have the lowest seed, but just make it to the playoffs, which would have been their first time since 2016. But the fact that they ended up winning the division, earning the number one seed for the first time since, I don't know when they've had the number one seed, but the last time that they won the AL East was 2014. And so for them to do all that and then lose in the first round, obviously it's disappointing. Or not the first round, but their first go round in the playoffs. It's disappointing. And the way that they played, I'll be honest, I wasn't too happy with how Brandon Hyde managed that playoff team. I didn't like the way that he was utilizing the pitchers. And understand this too, they didn't have John Means. They didn't have Felix Bautista at this point. So you were already kind of thinking like, this isn't going to be good. Like this, right. I mean, unless the offense really shows up, we don't have the pitching that we really wanted. We don't have that number one start. I can't believe they didn't start Kyle Gibson. They went for all the youngsters to me, which was not what I would have done. I'm not the coach, and I don't want to nitpick the way that Brandon Hyde ended up doing that, but I had never seen him do that type of managing throughout the entire season. So it was just surprising to me. And I had a lot of faith in those guys, and I still do, and they're still so good. But again, they had never played this many games in a season. They had never played this late. They had never played this type of high-stakes game. So you can't expect too much more from them. I do think that since they lost at home, that was really disappointing. If they would have won both of those, or maybe just one, and then lost on the road like they did, I think fans would have felt better about it. It's the first time they got swept in 91 series. It's like just ironic because they had that streak going in the regular season, and it's still a streak once they start up again at the end of March, but it's just so sad that's the way it had to happen. And I know that they put a lot of pressure on themselves. And so I think now going into 2024, I hope that Mike Elias does something similar to what we saw Eric DaCosta do with the Ravens, is get a stacked roster. You have it on offense. You just need those pitchers. That's what they need. And so their pickups replacing Felix Bautista with Craig Kimbrell is huge. And I love that pickup. But they do need another starting pitcher, at least one to replace Kyle Gibson. They lost Jack Flaherty, so that's two that you really need to replace. And you could use another left-handed pitcher because right now you only have John Means as a starter. So they definitely need to do more on the free agent market, and they haven't done enough. And it's January. Now, I do believe that they still have a lot of time and that they could still grab some more guys. Fingers crossed for Dylan Cease. I really like that pickup. Yep. But time is ticking fast, and spring training is like going to come up in the end of next month. So it's starting to really get rolling. And I think that the Orioles fans, the Ravens fans too, but the Orioles fans would really like to see good pickups before spring training so that when they go to spring training, they're not going to just be excited to see Jackson Holliday, who could be a really big piece of this offense and a big piece of this team going into next year. But they need to see other guys. They want to see new faces. They know the Adley Rutschman, the Gunnar Henderson, the guys that have won awards all throughout this season. They're good. They're mainstays. They're going to be there for a long time, but you need a couple more new faces, because that's what helped the Orioles last season was Ryan O'Hearn, Adam Frazier, the guys that they didn't have in years past that weren't coming up through the farm system. So you need to kind of make those pickups before it gets too late. And I think that they have the opportunity to do that, but the time is now.
Well, yeah, Valerie. I mean, the exciting part is that success begets more success. So for a long time, Baltimore was not a popular site for free agents to go to just because of how the team was playing. Of course, they weren't playing well for a long time there, but just had a 100-win season and a lot of bright things for this team coming up, especially on that offensive side. So hopefully, with the success they had last year, that it might be a popular place for free agent pitching to come, and you guys can really booster up that position going into next year, which would really help, of course. Last question. I know we got to get going here, but Camden Yards, of course, was renewed, and I would love to hear just how excited the fans were. I know that's definitely a historic venue. People of Baltimore, fans of Baltimore, love the Camden Yards. So, just what was the overall reaction when that site got renewed?
Total excitement. I don't think that there was a doubt really in anyone's mind that it wasn't going to stay here. And so for that lease to be extended, for things to work out in the front office and with the ownership, I think it's just incredible, because 30 years is a long time. And so that kind of pushes things off at least for the next 3 to 15 years or something. And then they can start talking about new things. But it puts a lot of new ideas into all of our fans' heads, because they're going to remodel certain things and they're going to have new additions. We saw this with the Ravens Stadium unveiling some new blueprints and renderings for what they're adding to the stadium, and the Orioles should do about the same thing with the money that they're getting in this deal from Maryland State something and so Stadium Authority, I believe. And so they're going to do a lot of things, and I'm really excited to see where it goes, because the stadium is so good already that you're like, how can it get any better? But that's because I haven't seen it. A lot of people haven't seen a lot of other stadiums, so including me. But I know that we're pretty spoiled with how Camden Yards is right now. I know they're probably going to change where the press sits, and that's a me problem. But it's going to help the fans, and there's going to be more suites, and it's going to be awesome. And they already have the most amazing food, and the views there are incredible. And that's a place that I really love going to every single day when we're in season. And it's not the same feel as M&T Bank Stadium because it's so vast there, and it's just such a great environment to be right downtown, and it's incredible. So I think the fans are so excited that it's going to stay here in Baltimore. I know there were talks of Nashville, but nobody wants to go there. Let's be honest. At least Baltimore fans don't. So I think they like it for the next 30 years, and that'll be a long time.
30 years. Wow. I actually didn't even know that. 30 years. Wow. That's it'll be there for a little bit then. You don't have to worry about that anytime soon. So, but yeah, hopefully, baseball seems so far away at this point. It's crazy, but it'll be here before you know it. And I'm excited for the Orioles next year. I really am, because they're a fun team. And we talked about it the first time we had you on. I mean, they're a really fun team to watch. So I'm definitely excited to see what they can do next year, and especially get some pitching behind the team and see how far they can go. Well, this has been awesome, Valerie. Like I said, really appreciate your time coming on. Sorry we went a little bit over, but loved talking to you. Got some awesome insight on the Ravens. I'm rooting for the Ravens. I'm an Eagles fan, so they're probably going to be out pretty early in the playoffs, unfortunately, with how they've been playing. So I do like the Ravens. I always have. So hopefully they can. I'll be rooting for them to make some progress and go far in the playoffs.
I appreciate you having me on, Jared. Always happy to talk about the Birds. So good luck to your Eagles. But I look, you never know what happens. I mean, you said we never knew who was going to win the World Series. Didn't think it was going to be the Texas Rangers. Yeah. I hope that since it's not the Chiefs this year, fingers crossed, it'll be somebody who's unexpected.
Yeah, baseball's a little bit different, of course. That could be a little bit more of a wild card sometimes, but literally. But yeah, it's the Eagles. They got something to show, so they have to fix something fast. Yeah, very, very fast. So, all right, Valerie. Well, I'll be in touch, and we'll love to have you on again sometime soon. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Okay, let's finish up with our off the map and long hauls of the week. Justin, start us off. What is your off the map of the week?
My off the map of the week is the AFC North. The AFC North will become the first NFL division in 88 years to pull off this feat if the Bengals beat the Browns in Week 18. The Bengals would be 9-8, obviously. The Browns and the Ravens, obviously, in the playoffs, with the Ravens winning that division, and the Steelers at 9-7 as well, having another over 500 season. But for the first time since 1935 was the NFL West, the much vaunted NFL West back in 1935, and the Lions were 7-3-2, the Packers were 8-4, Bears were 6-4-2, and the Cardinals were 6-4-2. So way back in the day, back in 1935, was the last time an NFL division finished with every team over a 500 winning percentage. So the AFC North has the chance to do that this Sunday if the Bengals win, and that would be that wouldn't be telling, because the AFC North is probably the best division in football, arguably right now, especially with the Steelers having a over 500 record, even though they didn't have their best season, still could get in the playoffs. Yeah. The Ravens, obviously, being the Super Bowl favorites. The Browns might actually be the second best team in the AFC, and then the Steelers was continuing their 500 finish, and the Bengals as well. So that could be an even better division next year once Burrow's back healthy, and the AFC North is probably the best division in football, not just now, but in the future.
It is a lot of the times, really. I was thinking, we were talking offline, I was thinking of the NFC East last year. So NFC East last year, they had every team at 500. So Eagles, Cowboys, and the Giants were over 500 last year. The Commanders
were at 500.
8-1.
8-1. So that's why I was confused. I'm like, because you said that offline, and I'm like, I thought that happened last year with the NFC East, but no, I forgot the Commanders had that tie that basically made them at 500. So close, but no cigar, I guess. My off the map, the Nets. Nets became the first team to be fined under the NBA's rest policy, this new rest policy that was implemented beginning of the year. Thursday night in their loss against the Bucks, the Nets bet Spencer Dinwiddie, Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, and Dorian Finney-Smith. The Nets then, of course, were fined $100,000 by the league for doing this. We kind of touched on it before the NBA started this year. There was a new rest policy that was given out by the NBA for all-star caliber players. I don't know the exact details, but of course, the first offense is $100,000. The second offense is $250,000, and then the third offense is $1 million. So, first blood goes to the Nets. Nets will be the first team, were the first team Thursday night to be fined by the NBA for benching players that could have otherwise played due to the new medical policy by the NBA. So, that's my off the map of the week, the New York Nets. Zach, what is your off the map of the week?
Off the map of the week, we're going to go down to Oxford, Mississippi, and we're going to find out if Chris Beard's team is actually good. They're 13-0 this year, but they're in Ken Palm. They're ranked 79th. Net rankings only 60. They're ranked 22nd in the polls because their best win this season so far has been a home win against Memphis. Now they're going on the road to take on Tennessee, currently ranked number 5. A lot of people's favorites to win the SEC this year. Chris Beard, if you remember what he did at Texas Tech, take that team to the national championship game back in 2019, made a couple other deep runs in the NCAA tournament. The guy clearly knows how to coach. But I think this is the game that we're going to find out if the Rebels' 13-0 start was because of their non-conference schedule, which is one of the worst in college basketball, or if this program is actually a legitimate threat to win the SEC.
Long haul. Justin, what is your long haul of the week?
My long haul of the week is the Lakers. And it turns out the reports are they are losing faith in their coach, DeVar Ham. He definitely has turned the Lakers around, in my opinion. But too quickly to fire him, I think it's very quick to fire him because the Lakers are struggling. And I think they should give him much more leeway. And obviously the NBA, coaches don't get as much of a leeway as some of the other leagues. I mean, you could say that across all the leagues, but the Lakers are the reports of DeVar Ham, and now Steve Kerr as well. The Warriors believe one of the forwards for the Warriors was losing faith in Steve Kerr. So a lot of coaching rumors in the NBA here with the Lakers and Warriors.
My long haul of the week, I'm going to go NBA. Wembanyama in general, putting up insane numbers every single night, it seems like. But they're not winning games. But Spurs, 5-29 of the season right now. They've lost 9 of their last 10 games. They're on pace to have the worst record in NBA history after having the number 1 overall pick. So, yeah, I mean, he's putting up stats, but he's just not winning games. Basketball is a team effort, of course, and Wembanyama is probably the best prospect since LeBron. Not probably, he is the best prospect since LeBron James. But like I said, he's just not winning the games. And all things considered, this is coinciding with Devin Vassell having the best year of his career in San Antonio. He's not getting nearly enough attention as he should be getting. Their most recent game against the Bucks, he put up 34 points, second highest scoring game of the season and his career. He's been playing well for San Antonio all year long, and he's not getting enough credit by any means. And I think a lot of the spotlight is going to Wembanyama, of course. But that's just my long haul. Wembanyama putting up awesome numbers, but not winning games, and especially taking away spotlight from other high-performing and up-and-coming players in the Spurs organization, like a Devin Vassell, that should be getting more attention. So, yeah, that's my long haul of the week. Zach, finishes off. What is your long haul of the week?
Long haul of the week is a little concerned about the Milwaukee Bucks. Their point differential is only on average +5 per game. They're averaging giving up 120 points per game. Damian Lillard is a big-time offensive weapon, but he is a liability on the defensive end of the floor. And giving up Drew Holiday, one of the best defensive guards in the league, so far it has not really paid off for them. Now, they're only 2 games back of Boston, but they're not worried about the regular season. They're worried about, can this team win a championship? Because they went all in to do that. They're going all in to try to keep Giannis in Milwaukee. And right now, that team has a lot of concerns on the defensive end of the floor. You're not going to win championships giving up 120 points a game in the regular season. And I know they're going to try harder in the playoffs, but that is a significant gap to try to climb if you're doing that in the regular season. So a little concerned about the Bucks, and maybe that trade actually lessened their playoff chances or their championship hopes.
For sure. Yep. All right, good show, guys. Back on Tuesday. Guest pending, but as always, break down NFL last week of the NFL. Probably some games we'll breeze over, of course, just given that they're either bad or just didn't really mean anything. But, of course, a lot of games that will happen on Sunday will mean a lot, and Saturday as well. So we'll break it all down and get into anything else that might have happened over the weekend. But until then, take care and keep on traveling.